Hi everyone, so Yo-Yo here bringing you a Magic Legends build guide. The build we'll be going over today is for a one button spam perma-stun crit build. This is probably the best build in the game for killing bosses, and if you enjoy permanently locking down the enemy and seeing big crit numbers, this build's probably good for you. The beauty of this build is that it's a one button spam build, so you can focus on your movement and don't need to keep watching which key you need to press, and also giving more attention to your other keys like Spell Surge, Utility and Secondary. As this is the first build after the 1305 patch, we'll go through the mechanics in a lot more detail so that you can adapt these new mechanics to your builds. In this guide, we'll be discussing how to get perma-stun on enemies, how to continually crit enemies, how to keep an infinite card draw going, how to take advantage of on-creature summon effects in the new patch, and how to balance your mana pool. So we'll start in the Artifacts section, and for this build, because we're not getting our infinite card draw from killing creatures with dot spells from the Implement of Combustion, it means that we can use that or Draconic Flux, or you can pretty much use anything you want in the legendary slot. I choose Implement of Combustion because you get more damage from the applying dot damage, and you also get Spark Recharge. And this build focuses around Winter Orb here, which whenever you cast a blue spell, you'll stun the enemy for 2.5 seconds, and the amount of enemies that are stunned is increased by the amount of creature spells in your deck. This will give us the perma-stun that we're after, and it also means that we can gain the crits from the blue spells, which increase damage to stun targets. We're also going with Liquid Foresight. Now this one gives you lesser swiftness and reflect every time you cast a creature spell, so we're going to be looking at ways to kill or sacrifice our creatures so we can keep drawing them back to our hand. You also get Chromatic Sorcery Potency. This one here we have Chromatic Sorcery Potency and Spark Recharge, Control Rating and Blue Mana Sorcery Potency, and Chromatic Sorcery and Blue Mana Sorcery. So we're looking for damage in the blue spells. If you were running the Dimir version of this, I would drop Liquid Foresight and put in Suffocating Curiosity. We'll now move on to the deck building part of it. And to start with this, I will talk about how we get our card draw first. And we get our card draw using Concentrate or another card draw card here, and then Thought Cadence. And that will allow you to get continuous card draw on 2 other spells, but you can push it up even to maybe 3 or possibly even 4 if you wanted to. So the golden deck layout for the new patch is 2 card draw and 2 or 3 spells, and then you put utility spells on your benched slot. The creature spells will fill in the gaps and they'll always be on the field, and that allows you to cycle through the 4 or 5 cards at the end on your one button spam rotation. Now with the new patch, we can no longer pull creatures back to our deck without killing them. So we're slotting this ability here, which is an enchantment, so it helps with the card draw because you now have a 2 to 3 ratio of Thought Cadence. And the reason this kills creatures is because whenever a creature comes out, it gets +2 and -1. So if any creature has a total toughness of 1, for example this one here, when it enters the field it will instantly die. So this, when you're putting your creatures in, you want to make sure that the ones that you want to redraw are the ones that only have 1 toughness. And so this guy here is actually really good for it because on death you get back 1 mana and he'll come back to the deck. Thought Cadence will proc it because it's now a new type of card, and you can resummon him, activate your on-creature summon abilities. Switched Drake is also a really good spell to go in this slot because when it dies you also draw a card. Like the black has quite a few good cards to go in this slot. Desecrate's a really good one to put there because it'll sacrifice one of your minions, and if you're running with, say, a Dimir assassin or something that actually gains benefits from specifically sacrificing creatures, this one's probably better to use. We also, in the black, have a full board clear of our allied minions, which is in Annihilation. So if you wanted to run the previous versions of the blue-black build, you would just slot this into instead of one of your damage spells, and it will give you a full board clear. Red also has a creature sacrificing ability, which is in Fatal Frenzy, and some of the other colours, they may not have a sacrificing card. However, there's quite a few equipment slots that you can use to sacrifice your creatures or kill your creatures, and I'll go over them a bit later in the video when we get to the equipment section. So I also put in Alchemic Thaumaturge, and that reduces the mana of your other spells. In my utility slots, I put a healing spell, and this means that if you do come up to a situation where you start taking heavy damage, you can cycle this spell in and drop one of the other damage spells, like put it back on the bench. I've also got Dark Gambler for the mana regen, and also Phantasmagoria because it applies greater weakness to the enemies. There's quite a few good blue utility spells in the higher end of the blue spell tree that you can unlock from the base. Things like move speed and an armor. They could be good to put in here as well if you have them unlocked. So before we move on to the equipment, I'll just quickly show my Dimir loadout for this build. And here is the Dimir loadout that I'm going with. And I will just show it as an example of how you would balance your mana, as when you're using Suffocating Curiosity, you're trying to maximize the amount of black spells in your deck. However, your main damage spells and your one-button spam rotation, they're all using blue spells. And so we need to fine-tune our mana pool so that we can keep the one-button spam rotation going, but with fitting the most amount of black mana cards in our deck. So the way that it works out how much mana you have in the bottom bar is it finds out the percent difference between how many blue mana dots you have on your cards versus how many black mana dots you have on your cards. So these multi-coloured cards are actually quite good because they almost cancel each other out. They don't fully cancel each other out because it's done as a total percent. But so what I've done here is I haven't maxed out my creature points, and that's because the amount of black mana that these ones use is actually quite low compared to if I put in a big black creature. I also use the Magnetic Pulse to add in a cheap spell that uses crowd control effects, which the Dimir Assassin benefits from. And we're also using the Sacrifice card, which when we sacrifice a creature with a Dimir Assassin, we gain another card draw. If you do want to have a detailed breakdown of how much your mana pool is made up of what, you can actually mouse over the mana bar at the bottom just to check what you're on when you're in the overworld. So now I'll move on to classes. And because we have permastun and we always have a heal on our bar, it's not so vital to use the Necromancer. It actually opens us up to quite a variety of different characters. Now, the Necromancer is still the best if you just want to be tanky and not worry about healing at all, because you get the Aether Absorption, which whenever you cast a sorcery, you heal yourself for 5% of your max health over 3 seconds. He also gets 500 sorcery damage and healing, and 250 healing. However, because this build is also focused on crowd control effects, the Mind Mage and the Dimir Assassin is also quite good because they get spell damage and crowd control. And the new Pyromancer is also pretty good because he has the highest sorcery damage. But yeah, if you have the Dimir Assassin with this build, it's actually really good. He gets a lot of perks from crowd controlled units. So now to the traits. I'm actually using Might from Unity, which whenever we summon a creature, we gain lesser might for 10 seconds. This can be picked up from the auction house. However, because of the hoops we've got to jump through to get a creature to summon, it's not as powerful as it was before. Psychic Prowess, I actually like using it because Psychic Prowess, I actually do enjoy using it. Because if you are using the Black Mutilation ability, the creatures are all, the ones that live anyway, they all have +2 on them already, and then this is giving them another +1. Necrotic Burst could be quite good as well, because we're sacrificing creatures. However, it should be noted that I think when a creature dies using something like mutilation, it doesn't specifically say sacrifice. I don't think this is counted as sacrificing. Another good one is disinformation, which comes from the Dimir assassin, and it's good because you can get lesser resistance every time you draw a spell, which is all the time. And whenever you discard a spell, you cast greater vulnerability on the enemy. And this happens whenever you use your greater mana regeneration spell, Dark Gamble. We are using Heart of the Iron Will because it gives you invulnerability for 2 minutes every time you die, and you get a chance to heal back up. So just really good overall trait. So with the equipment, there is 3 items that I would recommend getting on all of the builds. The most important one is this one here, and that gives you lesser mana regeneration whenever you have a full card hand and you cast a spell, so that's always. The other one is this one here, which is whenever you drop below 8 mana, you get Greater Might for 5 seconds. It's quite a big damage boost. And then this one here, whenever you activate Mana Surge, you gain Greater Might for 5 seconds. I'm also using this one here to get Greater Swiftness whenever I activate my utility spell for 5 seconds. But these 3 I would recommend on most builds. Now, if you don't have any of the equipment that I have, the stats that I would recommend are Spark Recharge, unless you have enough mana. If you have enough mana, then I would move on to Utility or Secondary Recharge and Proficiency, and this will depend on whatever class you're using, whatever their damage ability is on. So Dimir Assassin will be focusing on Secondary Proficiency and Recharge speed, whereas the Necromancer will be focusing on Utility, Recharge, and Proficiency. These gloves are quite good for both of those stats, and then I would use this amulet if I was using Necromancer, and I would use the blue amulet if I was using Dimir Assassin. So, as I mentioned before in the deck building section, there's a number of items that can be used to sacrifice your creature if you don't have a card that can do that in the color that you're trying to build for. And some of the better ones that I've found, and shout out to some of the Redditors for helping me get a few of these, are the Wrapping of the Occultist. And this is whenever you use your Mana Surge, you'll sacrifice a creature. And another good one I found was in the boots, is the Pack Leader's Boots. And this has the effect that you can see, the secondary effect here, where whenever you activate your utility, you gain green mana sorcery potency, but it also, your creatures gain -1/-1 for 20 seconds. And this has the same effect as Mutilation, where if you have a creature that has a total of 1 toughness, it will just instantly kill them. I don't think this counts as a sacrifice though, but Utility comes off cooldown much more often than Spark Recharge, so here's another good one. So if you do come across any items that sacrifice creatures that I haven't covered here, if you could link them in the comment section below, it'll help everyone else out. So I'll just give a quick demonstration of the build. And basically the way you play it is after you get your infinite card draw going, you just keep cycling through, stunning the enemy until your benched cards are back on the bench. So I'm just working my way through, trying to get the benched cards back. So with Nani Ula, I can actually stun her out of her ultimate. Okay, so here we go, now we're up and running. And if I do need the mana, I just use it and then keep cycling back around until I get it back on the bench again. Same with any of the heals or whatnot. So it's back on the bench again. Just one button spam it. Using my utility. Just keeping her locked down basically. Spamming that one button spam. I'll use some mana. And cycle it back around again. Go set back up again, utility. She's done. So that wasn't a very clean run, but it was a little bit hard for me to do it while I'm talking. But I hope you enjoy the build or gain some inspiration from it. If you have any suggestions for me on how to improve the build, chuck them in the comments below. And if you have any questions yourself, also feel free to ask them in the comments. If you enjoyed the video, please like and subscribe for more in-depth content. Thanks. See ya.